It's all you.
All right. Well, thanks, Gabe. So, yeah, my name is Jacob, and today I'm just going to be showing whoever's watching, whoever's interested, how to at least get started in GameMaker. So let me just see here. I'm just going to share my screen, and let's see. So just wanted to initially show, hopefully I'm still sharing.
Yeah, you are.
Okay, so just wanted to initially show this screen. This is the GameMaker Studio page, and it just lists some of the different products within GameMaker. So if whoever's interested wants to at least get started messing around with GameMaker,
I need to visit.
definitely. What's that?
I might need to visit it myself, to be honest.
Sorry, do you see that?
I might need to visit that website myself as well.
Oh yeah. Are you able to see the website?
I can. It's working perfectly.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just wanted to make sure. Yeah, so anyway, definitely recommend the trial version. It does have limitations. For example, you can't actually export your projects. So, I mean, if you wanted to make a game or something like that, then you wouldn't be able to actually release it on any online platform or anything like that, which kind of sucks. And you're also limited with certain resources that you can use, but it's definitely a great start just to fiddle around and get started working with that, come up with some simple games based on that. And then there are some other, licenses you can choose from. I personally would recommend one of these developer licenses just to get started if you did want to upgrade, just because they're permanent licenses. It's a one and done thing. Yeah. So just wanted to throw that out there. So what I'll do now is share a different screen.
Whoa.
So here we have the start page of GameMaker Studio 2. And what I've done, let me just back up a little bit. So if you want to get started making a new project, just click on the new folder, and you have a couple of options. You can either do drag and drop, which is it's pretty self-explanatory, a drag and drop way of implementing behavior into different objects and things like that without actually coding. Or you can choose. What's that?
GameMaker language is on the human coding, right?
I'll say that again.
What is the GameMaker language? Is that coding? Yeah,
GameMaker language is the actual coding side.
Oh, okay.
So and GameMaker language is actually pretty similar to Java, not necessarily in the sense that it's
C#.
It has all of the same like object-oriented properties, but it looks very similar to Java. And so if you're familiar with that, then you can get into GameMaker language pretty easily. And just getting into making games in general, I think that starting off with GameMaker language is the best start you could have. You can make some projects pretty quickly with drag and drop, but just to get familiar with coding and all that, definitely go GameMaker language first. So we're just going to go ahead and make a new GameMaker language project, and we'll just call it new project.
Cool.
Well, I guess we'll call it a different name.
Is it not showing, or?
I might already have a new project name. Let's try project 1. All right, here we go.
Cool.
So this is the GameMaker Studio 2 workspace. So once you start working with different things, this is where you'll actually be seeing your different sprites and game objects and things like that. And that's where what you'll be working with. This is where you'll be working with them. We can look over here. You have sprites, tile sets, sounds, scripts.
Can you download your own scripts or your own?
Say that again.
Can you download your own sprites to add to the library?
Yeah, you can download your own sprites. Yeah, we'll get into all of that. So, but yeah, you can definitely download your own sprites. Another thing I wanted to show real quick, just before we start getting into stuff, this is your a room, and this is basically where you'd be putting your. It's one of the places where you can put your game objects and things like that. Just so this is like potentially where your player will actually be playing the game. And if we just held Control and then scrolled out using the middle mouse button, we can see that a little bit better. And then you can change some of the properties of your room. Down here, you can change the dimensions. We can make that a little bit smaller, 640 by 480. So we just made the room a little bit smaller. By the way, I'm moving this around by pressing and holding the middle mouse button.
All right.
So that's how I'm doing that. Another thing up here is different layers in your room. There's the background layer and your instances layer. The instances layer is where you're actually going to be placing different game objects and things like that. And the background layer is stuff to, for your background to display. And you can notice that basically the way they're ordered in this way, like if I had another layer, and I can just drag it up there, that's how they're going to be drawn. So the background layer is like the very base, and then on top of that are going to be instances, and then on top of that, instances 1. So that's how that sort of works. So I just deleted that layer. So now I guess now that we sort of are familiar with rooms and stuff like that, we can get into sprites. So we'll just go back to the workspace, and we can right-click on sprites, and there are a couple of different options. So like you said, you could download a sprite or something like that, but just for the sake of showing off some of GameMaker's other features, we'll just create a sprite. I mean, normally when you're downloading a sprite, you would import a sprite, but to show some other stuff off, we'll start with edit image.
Oh, it's like a and then you can edit it. Okay.
And it has a built-in sprite editor. So, and real quick, we'll go back to the workspace. Besides edit image, where you can actually make a sprite, you can also change some other properties of the sprite right here, like the dimensions of it. So you can make that. We'll keep it 64 by 64, but you can see that you can change the dimensions and all that. And yeah, so stuff like that. Yeah, and here's the built-in sprite editor. So I guess just to get us started with making a simple game, we can make a simple player.
Cool.
So just for the purposes of demonstration, we can select one of these brushes, and we have a circle and all these different colors to choose from. We'll just go yellow. And I think I want to make a little smiley face. So by the way, you can see right here, this yellow is mapped to the left mouse button, and this black is mapped to the right mouse button. But you can just select colors and do it that way. Just to, I mean, lots of different options to choose from. But yeah, there's your little smiley face.
Wow, that's a good smiley face.
Yeah, thank you. So, oh, and by the way, we want to name this sprite something. So, what I found, people who use GameMaker, the main convention for naming things is taking like the first few letters of what you're making, and then underscore, and then whatever name is. So, sprite, SPR, underscore, and we'll just call this player. So now we have a smiley face sprite player. And there are a couple other things we can do with this. So you can see right here, the origin is 0 by 0.
Yep.
And you can see that this cursor is mapped all the way to the upper right or upper left of the where the sprite's showing up. And that's basically saying, I guess, what the location of that sprite is. And just to make it a little bit easier to like, place the sprite, or because like we will be this origin on the sprite is what also helps us keep track of where the object is. We want to make sure that just for the purposes of this, to have it in the middle center, so in the very center of the smiley face.
Yeah.
And then another thing we can look at is the collision mask. So clicking that, we can see that this square is the collision mask. So anything that interacts with that, or anything that comes into contact with that, that's what actually tells GameMaker there's some interaction happening to that sprite or to that object.
I see.
And and we can change the size of that as well. We can go into manual, so mode manual, and you can click on these and then resize that just to make it a little bit more forgiving. What's that?
Nothing.
Oh, okay. So now we have a resized collision mask for the sprite. So what we now want to do is create an object of this player.
My God.
So right click and create, and we'll just rename this obj_player. You can see that there are different options to choose from here. And to make sure this sprite is attached to this object, we'll go into this selection right here, and we'll choose SBR player. So we now have a player object that has this sprite attached to it. So we can go back to our room, and we can select our player object. We can just left click it and drag it into the instances layer of our room, because you can't. And that's another important thing. You can try to look on the background instances layer and try to drag it that way, but it's going to show that. So you're only able to put instances on instance layers. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. So now we have a player object in a room, and we can click play just to test to make sure that it runs. And bam, it's our first video game, guys. It's a face in a room that doesn't do anything. So congrats. But now what we want to do is ideally make this sprite move around a little bit, just to make this resemble a game a little bit more.
Okay.
So there are a couple options to do that. One thing I'm going to show is these list of events. And this is basically what you'll be using to implement behavior into your objects and do a number of other different things with. So just a quick rundown of some of the events. Create, this is an event that happens once the object is created, and it is usually used to initialize variables that are specific to that object. Destroy event, what happens when the object is destroyed. Step, and there are a couple of different options for step, but the main idea of step is that this is code that executes every frame of the game. So I think when you make a new project, it should be 60 frames per second already. So this is code that's going to execute every 60 or every second within those. Or excuse me, every 60 frames per second. Every step is a frame. So this is going to execute 60 times in a second. Alarm, that's you can have different alarms that are counting down, and once they count down, then whatever code's in the alarm executes. There's a draw event and some other stuff down here. We'll actually, let's just look at this event right now. Or actually, we'll just go back up here. So what we want to do is make this player move around a little bit. So one way you can accomplish that is, let's just use some of these key events. So there's key down, key pressed, and key up. So ideally, when you're controlling a player, you want to just press and hold the button. And that's basically what key down means. When you're pressing and holding a button, and as long as that key is held down, that's code that executes during that time. key press, that's simply if once the key is pressed, it executes that code and that's it. It doesn't matter if you're holding it down. If you've pressed it, then it runs through it once and you have to press it again to execute that code again. And then key up, when the key is released, that's when that code executes. So we'll do 4 different key down events. One for left, for right, up, and down. So for left, this is we want to make this player move left. So one thing that you can do, and one option that you could do, that is, basically for each object, there are built-in variables that are specific to that object, and those include variables that indicate or that keep track of the coordinates of the object. So for left, we want to shift the x coordinate of that player object to the left, and that means that you, based on the way this room looks, if you look here, you can see that if I move my mouse to the left, if you look down in this corner, you can see that my x coordinate is decreasing. So basically the way that works in GameMaker and in a regular Cartesian grid is if you're decreasing the x coordinate if you want to move something left. So, and if you know any Java, you can do that pretty simply by doing x minus equals, and we'll just do 5 or something like that. So what this does is it's shifting the x coordinate of the player object by 5 pixels. And because you'll be continuously holding down that button, and because this is code that's running 60 frames a second, as long as that key is held down, then it's going to simulate a continuous movement, even though it's only moving 5 pixels at a time. And we can do this for right as well. We'll just copy and paste that for right. Copy and paste. And instead of minus, we'll do plus. So x plus equals 5. Now for up, and this is where it differs from, I guess, the standard Cartesian grid that you would see in middle school or high school. But the way it works, you notice that 0, 0, or I'm trying to get close to 0, 0, is listed at the top left corner. And that as you go down, that's when the y coordinate is actually increasing. So that means that if you want to go up, you want to actually decrease the y coordinate of this player object. So that means that instead of something like y plus equals 5, you want to do y minus equals 5. And so we can copy and paste that, and it'd be the very opposite if you wanted to make the player go down. Instead of y minus equals 5, y plus equals 5. So we can just save that and quickly test it out just to make sure that it works. And bam, we have a smiley face that's now actually moving. But one thing that you might have guessed by now is, well, that's great, but what if the player actually runs up against one of the edges? Is it able to stop? And you can see that it doesn't stop. So I think for the next video, for the next tutorial, we'll take a look at how to implement the code. And it's pretty simple. You can probably work on it yourself. But that'll be the next step that we'll be looking at, is how to implement code that prevents the player object from moving outside of the boundaries of the room. And hopefully we'll take a look at some other things. So I guess in the meantime, thanks for checking in if you checked in. And that's all for now. So thanks a lot.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Hello? 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 Hello?
Hey, what's up?
Can you hear me?
Pretty well.
Great.
The audio quality isn't great, but
That's okay. Okay. Hello. I don't think anyone else is actually in here. Okay. My name is Camila. I'm an intern. This is my friend Zach, a former homeschool student, and I'll be interviewing him on the advantages or disadvantages of being homeschooled. Zach, please tell me a little bit about yourself and who you are today.
yeah, so I started getting homeschooled after 5th grade. Mom pulled me and my 3 siblings out and just decided to take it on herself. And that lasted through the end of high school for me, pretty much. I moved from Pennsylvania to Arizona when I was about 13, and the rules are much different out here. It's a lot easier to homeschool and a lot easier to get into college, that kind of thing. So that definitely helped. These days, I'm at Arizona State University as well. I'm a junior in computer information systems with a certificate rather in international business. So it's a lot of fun to do that kind of thing. Certainly, definitely come a long way from where I was in 5th grade for sure. So.
Great. What was life like before you were homeschooled?
I don't remember a lot about it. It was a long time ago. But I remember, I had a couple friends. I was definitely on the nerdier side for my school district. I mean, I still am, but so I didn't have a ton of friends, but had a couple guys that I would sit in the lunch hall with, sort of hang out and talk. But other than the kid who lived next door to me, I didn't have a ton of friends that I hung out with outside of school.
What about your life improved after you were homeschooled?
So once we started homeschooling, I felt like I was being challenged more in terms of what I was learning, because when I was in school, they didn't really have a gifted program or anything like that that was very good. So I spent a lot of my time just reading books, which was fun, certainly, but not the most beneficial thing to me actually learning. So when my mom got a hold of what I was doing, what I was learning, she definitely cracked the whip a little bit, and amped it up in terms of stuff that I was learning. So that definitely helped. And then also, she definitely made a big effort to socialize me and my siblings with other homeschooling kids, other homeschooling families. And so I made a lot of good friends there, in Pennsylvania also, but especially in Arizona. I still talk to a lot of these guys that I met when I was 13, 14. I still talk to them a couple times a week today, just sort of hang out.
So things just became more challenging and you felt like you were more intellectually stimulated.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when it comes to English and history and math. I'd say those were 3 subjects that I didn't really struggle with when I was in school. But once my mom got a hold of those, she definitely ramped up the workload with those. And so it was pretty refreshing to actually have to put some effort into those. Obviously, as a kid, I didn't love it because it was less time to mess around with my friend, play soccer, whatever it is that I was doing. in my spare time. But I can definitely, like, looking back on it, I can definitely appreciate it more now.
Was there anything you missed about public schooling when you did start homeschooling?
Not really. Not when I started, because like I said, I didn't have too many friends in public school. So there wasn't a lot to miss. Like the friend that I was closest with lived next door to me. And so even though he still went to public school, we would still hang out after he got out. And he was about, I think, 2 grades behind me. So it's not like we hung out in school that much anyway. As I got a little older, I started to sort of, I don't know if regret is the right word, but almost not going to public school because it sometimes felt like I had less. I thought I would have had more friends if I went to public school. Like that was a thought that crossed my mind more than once. But again, like that was all in the moment, and looking back on it now, I'm realizing that's probably not really the case.
So coming to college after you started college, was there anything you immediately noticed, like starting out, maybe even on your first day, that you were like, wow, thank God I was homeschooled? Or did you feel like, wow, I feel like I could have worked on some of these things better if I was in public school?
I'd say the thing that I noticed the most, like the big upside to being homeschooled in college, was probably the fact that a lot of my friends to this day still go to their academic advisor to have them select their class schedule. Whereas one of the big benefits to homeschooling, at least the way my mom did it, was we had sort of an input on what we chose to learn. And so I think having that experience kind of prepared me to be able to like look at my major map, look at my degree audit report, figure out, okay, what do I need to do next? And just sort of make it happen rather than having to go to the advisor for something like that. And I think that's pretty handy because then I just have to do it on my computer at home instead of having to make the appointment.
Did you feel there was any difference in when you got to college, how there's course schedules and homeworks due on specific dates between that and then how things worked when you were at home learning on your own pace?
Not overly, but that's definitely because of how my mom conducted things. I was every week handed the schedule of you will do this many times this week and you will hand it in on these dates. It's pretty regimented, a lot like college. So I didn't really feel a huge adjustment going to college from that. But definitely, everybody's parents do homeschooling differently. So that definitely is something that like a bunch of my friends who now go to Arizona State have also experienced. They've mentioned that to me.
Did they struggle with it too, or did they have more of the same experience you did?
It depends on the friend because, like I said, everybody does it differently. But I'd say most of them sort of struggled with it at first, and they've gotten into the swing of things for sure. It also helps that in Arizona, homeschooled students who are under 18 can enroll in a community college and start earning credit there that counts as both high school stuff and college stuff. So that, like, a lot of times a homeschooled student, or at least my friends, will show up to Arizona State having already finished 2 years, the first 2 years of their degree, essentially their gen ed requirements. And then that also counts for their high school curriculum. So they're able to finish high school and college in a combined 4 years. And starting at a community college, they definitely have less of a workload. And so it sort of helps you, I think, to ease into what like ASU is like versus a community college.
Do you think it was difficult for your mom to start homeschooling?
Oh, absolutely. Like having to take complete educational responsibility for me and my 3 siblings must have been a huge burden. And I definitely didn't make it easy for her because I'm an obstinate child. I was an obstinate child and often tried to get out of doing things or do things the easy way when she wanted them to do me a specific way. So yeah, it definitely was not easy. I think as we've all gotten older, it's become easier because the older we get, the more sort of outside influence there is. Like at a certain point, she can't teach us like math anymore once we get to like, geometry, calculus, stuff like that, stuff that she isn't super prepared to teach us. So it becomes more of a make sure that it matches, whatever we're doing matches up with the textbook, or make sure that whatever we're doing matches up with community college. So as we've gotten older, I think it's become easier. But definitely when we were younger, it was at least the equivalent of a full-time job, if not more.
If you were talking to a parent who was considering starting homeschooling their children, what advice would you have for them?
Especially living in Arizona, I would tell them to do it. The public school system in this state is not great. Outside of a couple like public charter schools, the school system here is pretty bad. And I think one of the big advantages of homeschooling is it allows your kid, especially when they're younger, to explore more of what they want to do. Like I did a lot of acting throughout middle and high school, and I definitely don't think I would have gotten that chance had I not been homeschooled. And the other advantage is the stereotype of homeschoolers is that they're not socialized as much as other people. But especially in Arizona, there are big communities and groups of people that meet up specifically to like have their kids hang out. And so not only did I meet a lot of good friends there, but then you start doing extracurricular activities, like, for instance, acting. I did a lot of acting with a lot of close friends, and that was a really good experience because as we all sort of aged through that at roughly the same rate, we all played off each other more and we all got better with each other. So it was both like friendship building and definitely helped the quality of what we were doing as well.
That's great. It's 7:33 now, if my clock's right. So we've used up all of our time, but thank you so much for coming on and talking about how it was homeschooling. I think that was really insightful, especially the part about having taken community college during high school. I didn't know a lot of people did do that. Mm-hmm. That was really interesting. Thank you,
Zach.
Thank
you for having me.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.